All right, folks, thank you for joining us today on The Juice. My name is Kyle Eason, founder of Inception Integrated Marketing. And with us today, we have a very special guest. His name is Frank Phillips, co-founder of Battery 621 with Mike Arzt. And Frank is going to give us a little bit of background today on Battery 621 and tell us about what makes it such a special place to work and a special place to be. And we're here in Battery 621, of course. You're going to see a lot of activity today because that's always happening here at Battery 621. So Frank, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your own background, your own journey here to Battery 621. What brought you here today? So what are some of the highlights in your professional and personal life?
Yeah, so I grew up out in California. I got a master's degree in mechanical engineering and used that to leverage myself into a dream job out in Vermont with Burton Snowboards. I was involved in product development, research and development out there. Mike Arzt, my now business partner, was there at Burton as well. We met on the slopes in Vermont, and we kind of dreamed out the idea of the public works, which is kind of the umbrella business, kind of encompasses all the rest of our businesses. And in the process of figuring out what that might look like, we decided that the most important thing that would nurture the public works would be a building like this with a neighborhood of businesses like this. Synergistic companies that we liked not only to hang around with, but had this kind of skills that we would need to surround ourselves with. So when we left Burton back there in Vermont, we came here thinking that Denver was the city that was about to blast off, and kind of got lucky in the fact that Denver did blast off.
What year was that approximately when you moved
So
here?
I moved out here in 2004. I bought a house up in the same town that Mike was living in, and we both still live up there in Evergreen. And the main thing that I wanted out of a place up there was a big patch of land that I could build a big workshop on, so that we could get this business, the public works, started before we were able to, be able to afford to leverage ourselves into a big building like this down here in Denver. So first thing I did in 2004 when we got here was build a big 1,500 square foot workshop that we could start this thing out of. And pretty much immediately started looking for a building that we could make into a co-working space like we have here. It took a downturn in the economy to get to a place where we could actually afford in to the market. And so in 2009, I finally convinced, I'd been calling the owner of this building for about 3 years. Every about 3 to 6 months, I'd give him a call and ask him if he's ready to sell. And it was an empty building, an empty shell of a building that he wanted to lease out. But then in 2009, he had enough stuff going wrong that he decided that it was time to sell this piece. So we convinced him of selling. We brought in the Winklers, Jason and Ellen Winkler, to help us kind of finish concepting out the idea, help us with shouldering some of the risk. It was one of the first co-working spaces in Denver. Mm-hmm. We didn't know of any real co-working spaces back then when we were concepting out. So even though we thought the idea was so amazing, still seemed like a pretty risky idea to put every nickel that we had saved into.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a really interesting story of sort of how Battery 621 came to be, and a lot of interesting events have happened here over the years and highlights. What are some of those that come to mind when you think about the history of the building itself?
So we've, together, Mike and I, him taking the lead on a lot of the more event kind of driven stuff. He's a marketing genius, and his Rolodex is pretty stuffed full. So, but there's a couple things that we kicked off here that ended up becoming pretty amazing, kind of transformational events for us in our journey. One was kicking off the business of fun. And we just brought in a bunch of professionals and brought in a bunch of folks who were typically younger. Either brought them in through a Google group, or we brought them in through, actually butts and chairs, and talked about, these guys have jobs that you might want to aspire to, how do you get from where you are to where they are? So these guys just kind of opening up and talking about their journey. How did they get to be a professional athlete, or producer of amazing videos, or maybe head of a magazine, or musician. Those kind of. Macklemore sat right here where we're sitting and did one of these business and fun events, which kind of mind-blowing to think that we were able to take it from concept to that, just without really any money or that kind of thing coming in from the outside.
And this was sort of a speaker series that was held here.
Yep.
And you said young people. Are we talking about college students, high school kids, or could be adult early career?
We were targeting college kids. What we found was I was the moderator of the first couple of them, and I remember we went up to CU. We had a packed house, 300 people. We had Chris Davenport and Steve Nielsen, some of what we thought were the pillars of the winter sport industry there, and I was kind of getting those questions asked and just getting the conversation started. Before we got started, I probably gave a minute and a half, kind of like kids an idea of who I was and why I was up next to these icons. And then at the end, we opened it up for question and answer, and it was pretty amazing because a lot of those kids had questions of me, which I never really thought that anybody would ever think of my job as something they would aspire to. But there was a bunch of kids there that were, on an engineering track, and then looking at me and like, man, you're just like really living the life and an engineer. So it felt a little more more within their scope of how they could kind of reach, and so interesting that the college students really grabbed on to the idea of, I'm on this track, I don't know how I got here, how do I get from this spot that I find myself into that spot that I really now can see and really want to be in.
What other events stand out for Battery 621?
Kickoff of Winter is always been a great one. Sometime in October, we were bringing in a bunch of food trucks and just having people just celebrate the fact that it's about to snow, and that's always been a really great one. When Icelandic was here, they used to throw a First Friday party that was always epic and brought in, we'd have 600 people come through in an evening. But that celebration of winter has always been something that this place has done well.
We have a dog that's joined us on set. A lot of dogs here in Battery 621, dog friendly, you could say. There's a certain ethic certainly at Battery 621. How would you describe that? I think I've seen words like intersection of lifestyle, leadership, makers oftentimes. Public Works figures into that as well. And it's kind of an interesting mix, and you just don't find that elsewhere, I believe.
So there's some structural things that make that up. There's some programming that makes that up. There's some kind of paradigm philosophy kind of stuff that make it up, and then that rolls into the creating the community vibe that we have. So structurally, we worked really hard to make a space where people can really hunker down and get really solid time with their headphones on and no distractions. And then they can walk out of that and immediately be in a common space where they're going to run into people that they know. They can, throw the ideas that they've just been working on out and, vet them, get a feedback loop going, and then they're going to potentially meet folks that they've never seen before, and all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, how could our circles not have crossed before? Yeah. So that that ability to create a space that combines those things so well has structurally created a place where the community really can go from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds when you run into somebody new, or you run into somebody you already know and you start talking about in a really deep level about something you were just really concentrating on. So that's kind of the structural part. The paradigm part is that we would never allow two companies in a lease here that feel like they would be either in conflict or in competition with one another. So, we've got a few digital marketing agencies here in the space, and we would always ask those guys, all of them, if they felt like there was somebody that was going to be competitive. And there's been a time or two where we've accidentally didn't ask that full question and really kind of got bit by it, because it takes that for the community to feel safe and feel like they can throw out all those deep ideas to anybody in the building without feeling somebody's going to steal or compete with them on the ideas that they're throwing out. So then just program wise, everybody loves a party. Everybody here seems to love the outdoors, love the kind of the lifestyle of music. So we get those events going often enough, and it feels like people can come together and really kind of let loose a little bit. So it takes another step away from that, deep thinking and full on work to bring the synergy of work and play together.
Yeah, and I think you've used that word synergy a couple of times, and it made me think about another phrase I've heard: creative collisions a little bit. So there's time for that. It's set up to happen either in a casual setting, having a drink, or just grabbing coffee or beer, in the afternoon here. And it does have a great environment, and that's for sure. We're hearing that over and over again from people.
Thank you.
I think that really gives us a good idea as to some of the juice that's here for Battery 621. And looking ahead, what is next for Battery? Is there something different that you're trying to do, or something you're trying to get the word out for? And how do you see the future for Battery 621 in terms of 2, 5, 10 years from now?
So one of the things that Mike and I really love to do is to innovate. And we've got some pretty clear ideas on, how do we take this idea that used to be a brand new innovation, not all that long ago, just 10 years ago, there weren't co-working spaces here, and now there's a dozen of them, 20 of them.
Yeah.
And we've got some ideas to take it kind of to the next level.
Okay.
And springboard in some of the working relationships with clients that we've got now. So I think you're going to see some good innovation going forward.
And when people are trying to follow what's going on with Battery 621, where should they go? Where are you going to get the word out? And we might even talk about this show, The Juice. Where's that going to be for Battery 621? So we're gonna start a landing page for all of these videos. That's going to be everybody in 621 here to be able to tell their story and tell what the juice is kind of behind what they've got going on, including this one, and then including, we'll probably put one up for the Public Works and maybe Supple, because there's a couple of the companies that we've got going. I think that's probably going to be a YouTube channel, maybe also linked to from the Battery 621 webpage. Which is what, battery621.com?
Yep.
Plain and simple.
Yep.
All right. Well, that sounds fantastic. I think some really interesting, exciting things coming. Can't wait to hear more. Do you want to give us a preview of something that's happening? Maybe you're envisioning for the next 5 years or anything, or do you want to kind of keep that under wraps and let that happen slowly?
It's not so much that I'm trying to keep it under wraps. It's just that it's a lot of exciting but half-baked ideas at the moment. So
still coming together.
Yeah, we do have a big party. We're calling it the Independence Day party coming up in a month, and we're really looking forward to kicking off spring, that point in time, and having a good time. So maybe we'll see some of you guys there.
All right, that is fantastic. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it. Frank Phillips, founder of Battery 621, I should say co-founder with Mike Arzt. And really glad to have you today. Thanks so much for your time. And
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. All right, thanks for the juice. This is Kyle Eason.